Good morning. I'm Paul Bauer. Welcome to Capital Marketing Solutions Marketing Magic Workshop. Combine two key elements, education and experience, with equal parts of humor and empathy, and you can create a blend that has made Barney Zick one of the most sought-after corporate marketing consultants in the corporate world today. Barney is an innovative, think-on-his-feet problem solver who can show you dozens of marketing opportunities you may have overlooked. He is a humorous and creative negotiator who will share lessons learned through his millions of dollars of business and investment deals. Barney's first presentation today is entitled, Why Should I Do Business With You? How to Discover Your Unique Selling Proposition. Please join me in a warm welcome for Barney Zick.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. It's great to be here this morning. The concepts that we're going to share with you can be utilized in all aspects of your business. Everything from if you're in the seminar business, if you're in the radio business, if you're in the television business, or if you're running a shoe store or a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Because the principles that we're going to be talking about are very universal principles that more or less permeate everything that you do. We're going to be talking about how to build a bottom line in a price-competitive world. That's the concept. We're going to be talking about what makes you unique. We're going to give you all the aspects of business concepts that I think are not only building blocks, but when you go back to figure out how do I rebuild what I've been doing before, every time you focus on this, you get more momentum in your business. Now, there's a great story of a guy who came to St. Peter's Gate, and he said to St. Peter, do I get in? He says, well, actually, you have a choice. You can go to heaven or hell. And he says, well, what's this? He says, well, you know, the devil has so many lawyers down there. We're constantly getting sued. And so they said we had an unfair advantage. So what we're going to do is, from now on out, to settle the suit, everybody has a chance to go down and look at hell. If they have a chance to go to heaven, you can take your choice. Then you sign off. And then we've made them happy this way. Been doing it for a couple of weeks now. And he says, okay, show me through. So he shows him around heaven. It was nice. It was clean. And there was good, healthy food to eat, you know, and there was music playing in the background, and there was well-lit park benches for everybody to read books at, and so on and so forth. So then he got in the elevator and he went down to hell. And oh, it was party time. Everybody was having an absolute ball down there. They're playing his most favorite music. There were 3 times more women than there were men, and all the women thought his jokes were funny. So he was having a ball. Snack foods, his favorite junk foods, but they had no calorie, no fat in them. It was unbelievable. He came up that next morning, partied all night, and came to St. Peter, and he says, St. Peter, he says, this has been quite an experience. I can't believe it. I'm going to hell. Sign me off. Where do I write? I've never had so much fun. St. Peter said, I must be having a new marketing consultant down there, because we've been losing a lot of them. But anyway, he signed him off, sent him back in the elevator. He gets out, and it's hot, and it's dank, and it's terrible. Nobody's comfortable. Nobody's comfortable. And all there is a bunch of guys walking around, all aches and pains, and it's stinky, and there's no music, and there's no pretty ladies, and everything else. And he finally goes around and finds the devil. He says to the devil, he says, what's going on here? Last night there was so much fun. There was party, there was music, there's ladies, it was great. He says, hey, yesterday you were a prospect. Now you're a customer. And a big portion of what we're going to be talking about, a big portion of the focus that we're going to be involved in is a customer focus. And something that I've always believed in, that you'll find will permeate everything that we're going to be talking about, is focusing on the customer. Focusing on the customer as having a lifelong relationship with that customer and what that can mean to you and can mean to your bottom line. So the concepts that we're going to be sharing with you are broken into 7 parts, and the 7 parts start out with marketing insight number 1. It's not about you. It's about your customers. It's not about you. It's about your customers. And I'm a big believer in customer and client-centered marketing and sales. Now, where do you use this? You use this in absolutely, positively everything that you do. You use this in your sales letters, in your presentations, in your negotiations, in your marketing materials. Everything you do needs to be customer-centered. to give you an example of this, there was a think tank group, and they really started out as a group from Brigham Young University of professors, English professors. Eventually it became a separate corporation. I did some work with them, and then they got bought out by Franklin, which became Franklin Quest, which, you know, is now a listed company. But their think tank group was brought in to solve business problems, especially related to written communications. And this was a cross-disciplinary group between marketing and English, basically. And one of the challenges they had, and I don't remember who it was, I think it was McDonnell Douglas, but it could have been Boeing, but it's one of the big companies that do an awful lot of government work on selling huge equipment to the government, but it's one of those two. And they said, how do we increase the number of bids that we get accepted? Tell us what we're doing wrong in our communications. And I'll give you one of the linchpins that made all the difference in their success. And it's something that you can do. They took their proposals, actually proposals. Remember, I've worked with government proposals. I actually wrote a course one time on how to win government proposals. Another lesson in futility. Well, I learned the lesson that just because everybody says they want the course doesn't mean A, they're going to buy it, and B, you can find out where they are to sell it to them. Learned this early on in my career, thank God. So, but they took the proposals and they went through and circled in red the I's, the we's, the name of the company, the people that were in charge working for them, and anything else. Went through and used green to circle all the you, the government, the person that was the buyer, and so on and so forth, and they counted them. And they literally counted them. And basically, if you won, you lost. If you won, you lost. You say, well, wait a minute. These are written proposals going to the government in a very, very stringent format. It doesn't make any difference. What people want to hear about is they want to hear about themselves. And when people hear you talking, and when they hear you talking more about yourself than talking about them, guess where they know you're centered? Now, if you are a professional speaker, we have a real cross to bear here, because you probably have a swollen ego that you wouldn't be a professional speaker, or a hole in your ego, whichever way you want to put it. I mean, we could get into psychology here quite quickly, but you know, the ego is a very necessary part of every individual. But it's supposed to be, you know, like the kidney or the heart. It's not supposed to be the entire body with everything else hanging underneath it. And I found that speakers tend to go through 3 stages. The first stage, and there's 2 kinds of speakers, but most speakers fit in the first category. Category 1 speaker, you go through 3 stages. And the first stage is, look at me, I'm up here. And the most important thing to you is the fact that the audience is out there. The second stage is, I have something to say and you will listen. All of a sudden they get to the message stage. And many speakers are stuck in the message stage, and that's just fine if they get a good message. If they don't have a good message, you know, people don't show up. Then the third stage is, I have gained wisdom and I want to share with you. What do you need to know? Now, there is a second kind of speaker, and that's the kind of speaker who was already in their life at stage 3 in their life and decided to become a speaker and teach about it. And I know all of you will volunteer to be in that category rather than to admitting to even having gone through the 3 stages. But since many speakers start out in this category of ego, look at me, I'm up here, that makes it all the more difficult to be audience-centered in the things that you say. I started out as an ego-driven speaker, no 2 ways about it. Thank God I spoke for the first 7 years for free, because it took about 10 to get that down to a level that was withstandable, so there were people suffered for the first 3 of paying me and having to listen to me. But after about 25, I guess more than that, almost 30 years of speaking, because I started back when I was in college, I can keep it under control. But the focus has to be on them. And I know that even the most caring people sometimes let the ego get in their way, and you can't let that happen in anything that you do, in your sales presentation, in your sales literatures, in your actual presentations. Now, if you're a person who is not going to be doing seminars, and if you're a person that's not going to be doing seminars, this is your one-on-one presentations when you go into a corporate boardroom or you sit down across the desk from somebody with the intent of talking to him. It's the same thing. If you can script your mind before you go in to figure out how is this all about them. You use this in your negotiations. I teach a course on negotiations, and I'm very glad to say that I finally gave up on independent publishing, everything, and my book, The Negotiating Paradox, How to Get More by Giving More, will be out very shortly. And one of the things that I center on there, that the real secret to negotiations is asking questions. Because the more you ask questions, the more you gain information from the other side. The more you gain information from the other side, that you can figure out exactly what they need and want that's not important to you, and give it to them, so you're giving them more and more of the things they want. And then you get down to the critical things that you want, and sometimes they can be literally given to you because you've given so much away that you didn't care about but was important to them. Like maybe getting it done in 24 hours is what's absolutely urgent for them, and they'd pay anything for it, but you happen to be the only company in the town that always did it in 24 hours anyway, you know. So that's a perfect example. The secret to all this, to winning the negotiations, is asking questions. If you didn't ask enough questions to find out that the urgency with this person was getting it in 24 hours, then you wouldn't have the quid pro quo to do the exchange to be able to get the things you need back on your side of the table. What makes questions work? What makes questions work is when you're client-centered. In fact, I'll give you a little idea to try. If you will, play like you like people, play like you find them interesting, and learn to ask them questions. If you'll do this for enough years, if you're a decent human being, you'll end up loving people and just being so delighted at all the answers you get. I mean, I interview guys that are giving me shoe shines. I mean, I don't want to tell him about where I've been and where I'm going, because I know that, and he doesn't care. I want to find out about, and I remember when I was in San Diego, a guy shining my shoes, and I was kind of worried because I was feeling sorry for the guy. He was an elderly black guy, and he must have, I would guess, probably 77 years old. And here he's shining shoes at like 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. He just showed up about the time I came in for my flight, got checked in, I wanted to get my shoes shined. And I was feeling sorry for the guy. And I got to talking, and the reason he was there is his shoe shine guy wasn't showing up. He owns 22 stands in San Diego. He moved to San Diego in '46, bought 2 acres up on the hill overlooking the airport, and he knows someday that's going to be sold for commercial by his children. This guy was fascinating. I mean, the things that I learned by talking to him is fascinating, and I learn these things all the time. Did you know that the elevators that go up and down on the outside of hotels, that a janitor is the reason that idea came about? Maybe it would have come about later from somebody else. But a janitor, the old hotels did not allow enough people being in elevators at once. They didn't have conventions back then. So they didn't need a lot of capacity for elevators. You know, nobody had 200 people heading in an elevator at one time. So they were closing the hotel to put in an elevator. And this janitor couldn't stand the loss in pay. And he finally said, why don't you run the doggone thing up the outside wall there? And that way we could keep the hotel open. And all of a sudden it dawned on the architect that not only was it a good idea, if you put windows in the elevator, that could be kind of neat, you know, from a janitor. From talking to a janitor late at night while they're trying to find me a room and they said they were sold out. We had a real great conversation. He eventually found me a room. So if you'll develop this process of asking questions in your negotiations, it's amazing the things that you'll find out. And as I said, the real emphasis here is on being client-centered. So if you use that concept in your sales letters, your presentations, in your negotiations, in your marketing material. I mean, let me give you some really neat expression for you to ask yourself constantly as you read through your marketing material. And I'd kind of like you not just to have the words down, but when you read the words, remember the way I said them. Who cares? Every time I read marketing materials over, that's why, who cares? I have a client who owns one of the largest dental supply companies in Argentina. And she flew up to Chicago. We were up in Chicago yesterday at the huge dental convention in McCormick because we're talking to a company about buying their company, and I'm negotiating that transaction. And we had a fun time because her family with several businesses have been clients of mine for a couple of years now, of going through the booths, and we're kind of mumbling to each other as we go by booth after booth, who cares? Who cares? Because, you know, they'd have, you know, John's Dental Supply. Who cares? John's Dental Supply should have been in a lot smaller print, and what he can do for you should have been in larger print, and then John would have been sitting there munching on a biscuit while people are walking by. Same thing in your brochures. If you never get around to who cares, guess what? If you never solve that question of who cares, nobody cares. Nobody cares. See? Nobody cares that John has had, is it 15 years in the radio? 12 years in the radio business. What they care about, let's say that you're talking to a sponsor, a potential sponsor. They don't care he's had 12 years in the radio business. They care that his 12 years in the radio business means that he has built a following that at a specific time of day are going to tune in to hear his show, and that means there's equity in his show, and that means that there's power in their commercials. Now, so often we throw things out and we think that the message is there. And we throw something out and say, well, I've had 12 years in the business, you know, and the person on the other guy says, well, yeah, you're a pretty neat guy, aren't you? You know. But if you phrase it in the other way, you say, because of my 12 years of continuous programming in the very same time slot, I can guarantee you a listener base that not only listens, but they're loyal and listens to what I have to say. What this means for you is, not you be given the feature, go ahead and give them the benefit. What this means for you is blah, 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 blah. That's the process. That's the process. So our marketing insight number one is client-centered. Client-centered. Let me ask you a sales and marketing quiz. First, do others offer goods or services equal to yours? How many people here do have some stiff competition? Let me see those hands. Very good. About 3/4 of you gave me the wrong answer. The rest of you didn't raise your hand, which either means you don't like raising your hand. That was a trick question. Being a former college professor, I'm allowed trick questions. I think that the true secret, and the main topic we're going to be talking about during this segment, the true secret of being a success in business today is to get to the point that you, in your heart of hearts, believe you have no competition. Because the more that you see what you do is totally unique, the more reasons that you have to give people of all the various points that make you unique, all the less you will have competition. Now, you can call this niche marketing or finding your niche. That's part of it, I suppose, but I think that's kind of a small segment compared to the big picture. And we all do have to find our niche, and the better that you are at finding your niche, probably the more successful that you're going to be in the short and the long run, but especially in the long run. But there's basically a real change going on in the fabric of American marketing today. And that change has come about from a lot of different things. Because of the information age, as it's called, and what's going on with everything that's computer-based, the internet, the fax machine. I remember when it took me a half a year to buy a fax machine. What would you ever want to use one of those for? And now I'm asking the same question, because if you don't have email, I probably don't want to do business with you. Because I get, on average, 28 to 50 emails a day, and I can take a half hour to an hour out of my day and get out 58 pieces of correspondence if I had to, which would have taken a secretary a couple of days to do a while back. And I love email because people are so forgiving about, nope, not interested, but make me another offer. BZ, enter. You know, and it's gone. You know, I have to say, well, it's good talking to you again, and I enjoyed our meeting last month, and hope that your children are doing all fine. Period. Paragraph. You know, so on and so forth. Saves trees, the whole bit. Because of electronic commerce, because of all the changes in the way people are doing business, things are moving at an increasingly rapid pace, and this is not going to stop. This absolutely positively is not going to stop. Instant customer service is the norm for many corporations. I have a deal with one of the laptops that I have, a program I signed up for. My laptop goes down, I toss in a FedEx box, and it's gone. The next day they fix it, the next day after that, it's back. You know, and I remember the first time I had a computer that gave me trouble. Of course, it did have stone parts in it. It was a long time ago. I mean, it took 2 weeks to get somebody to come out, okay? we're having, because of the speed that things are moving at, we have far more invasion. We have far more people getting offers to us. Now, what this is all boiling down to is that life is getting pretty doggone impersonal. Life is getting very impersonal. So when somebody gives you a message, a marketing or sales message, number one, it's now many, many messages that you're having to confront to make a decision. Back when I first did direct mail things in the 70s, when I had probably the second or third largest real estate newsletter in the country, there were only about 10 decent newsletters on real estate in the whole country, and of those, only 3 or 4 were really that large. And when you received something from me, it was meaningful because you recognized the return address and so on and so forth. There are so many impressions that are hitting people nowadays, and they're coming from so many sources that if you can't stand out by quickly and easily telling people not only what you do, but what you can do for them, all in the very same thing, then they're going to have a very hard time latching onto you. And immediately, you being the envelope that you open because of the teaser copy, or you being the headline that is read that drives them into the body copy, or however you use these concepts we're talking about now to grab people's attention and drive them through. The concept is called quite a few different things. It's called unique sales proposition, USP. It's called your strategic competitive advantage. It's called your unique selling proposition. I mean, I can give you a dozen different reframes for the very same concept. It's what most all of my work is about. If you had to say, you know, Barney, what do you do? I'd say, do you know how most businesses can't tell you what they do in a clear and succinct fashion, let alone what they can do for you? What I do is help you reframe and package your strategic competitive advantage in such a way that you can instantly tell people how they can benefit by doing business with you, thus doubling your bottom line. Because this just flows through all the work that I do, because it's so important. Now there's a day worth of aspects. We have a short period of time to go through this, but there's a day worth of aspects, and let me just give you the tip of the iceberg on all of them, because there's a lot of research and study and a lot of your own thoughts that we could go into in this process. But my personal viewpoint is we kind of have an inverted pyramid here, and if we start at the very top, we're talking probably your personal mission statement. I really think that you'll be a lot happier in life if you can figure out what your job was here on earth. I don't want to get cosmic about this, but maybe it's true that nobody is supposed to have a job here on earth, but I'll just tell you this, that it'll go a lot better if you think you have a job here on earth and figure out what it is and go after it, because if nothing else, at least you had purpose. And I say that as first because quite often organizations that I'm talking to are companies, and then it's your mission statement for the company. However, if you're a sole proprietorship, or if you're a person who owns all the stock in that big company, then your personal mission statement will start dictating what the company mission statement is. After the company mission statement, when we chunk down, what is your USP? What is your unique selling proposition? What's your position in the marketplace? What is your focus? Now, let me cover that for just a little while. The concept of focus is not always apparent, but you start breaking it apart and you can see where people are using it. What is the focus of Sony Corporation? If we talk about Sony, what's the one thing you expect out of Sony? Huh?
Consumer electronics.
Yeah, that's what they do. But what do you expect out of them? Give me a qualitative thing. Yeah, it's qualitative, but what else? And a lot of people go for quality. What one thing do you know about Sony? Miniature. It's miniature.
Reliable.
How about innovation? Isn't Sony first with most everything? I mean, whatever comes out, Sony's got it first. And see, Sony has been absolutely positively built on innovation. There's no two ways about that. See, Sony came out with the Walkman. I'll just give you a little quick rundown on this. Sony came out with the Walkman. This is so neat. And they sold the Walkman for, and I'm not giving the exact numbers here, You know, all the stories I tell you are true. Some of them just haven't happened yet, you know. Sony sold the Walkman for $49.95, and it was a tape recorder with an earplug and a volume control. And 6 months later, somebody else, probably a Kai or somebody like that, came out with the exact same thing at $49.95. That day, Sony dropped the price to $39.95 because the new model, which was launched that day, had AM radio with it too. And 6 months later, all the competition had Walkmans with AM radio, and they were all at $49.95 because they came out with it, same price as Sony. That day, Sony dropped their price to $39.95 because that was the old model. The new model has AM and FM. And they went through something like 13 changes, and they got to where it was underwater, and it was, you know, dust-proof and in multicolors and so on and so forth. And what were they doing? They were running back to the lab and starting from scratch. And no. They know that their position in the marketplace is as the innovator. So they had these little puppies lined up, coming down the incubator chute. They had them molds pressed, ready to go to market. And how long were they going to keep issue 1 on the market? They're going to keep issue 1 on the market until the competition caught them. And the day the competition caught them, it was like when I had a fuel-injected Corvette, and I remember I used to drag on the streets. I was terrible. Because what I would love to do was run them through first gear, and they hit second gear. And when they hit second gear, I was still in first gear, and that Fuelie was running like you read about. It was screaming. And about that time, I put it into second gear and jumped out ahead of them. I loved it. I loved it. What a thrill for the macho ego. It was great. I'm almost tempted to go back and buy another one. But that's what Sony did. As soon as somebody else hit second gear, they had enough strength that they popped out ahead of them. They'd pop out ahead of them. Because Sony is innovation. Nordstrom's. Nordstrom's. What is Nordstrom all about? Paul, you want to move the microphone around? Just stick it in front of a couple of faces and make them tell me what Nordstrom's is all about.
Who knows Nordstrom? West Coast.
Here, let's ask Dick here.
Number one thing about Nordstrom is service.
Service. I mean, the epitome, the absolute epitome of service. Thank you, Paul.
If they're closing at 9 o'clock and you call up and say, I need something, they find an employee or somebody like that to drop it off on their way home because you needed it that time.
Very good. Why don't you have a seat in the front, that way you can run around with the microphone, in case we need you again. That's one example. I'll give you another example. There's a lady who went into Nordstrom's, and she wanted a simple black dress. She got the simple black dress. She's looking at 2 or 3. She went back in the change room, came out, and like a good Nordstrom salesperson, they had the accessories laid out. Here's pearls, here's silver, here's gold, here's earrings and so on and so forth, and here's how you can accessorize this. You know, a little glamorous, a little gaudy, a little simple, okay? And she said, no, I'm sorry, my child died. This is for the funeral. The salesperson said, I'm deeply saddened to hear that. And the gal went back in and changed into her clothes and came out and started to get out her purse. And she says, no, Nordstrom is giving you this dress. We couldn't charge you for it in this circumstances. I mean, I get touched telling that story today. I mean, I can get tears. If I think about it a lot, I can get tears just thinking about that story today. But that is the epitome of service. Now, where did that come from? Because she looked in the manual. Child dies. No, I mean, it's not in there. Trust me, it's not in there. Okay? What she did is she looked in her heart and said, what would I do to make this right? What would I do to make this right? There's no way I can charge for this. But the interesting thing is, because management, in their wisdom, came up with this idea that the customer is all, and was smart enough to convey that idea all the way down to the level of the lowest paid person who meets the public.
Barney, do you know anything about New Pig in Pennsylvania?
Can I finish this story first, Paul? Thank you. And because they were able to get it all the way down to the bottom, which very, very few people do in business. There are a lot of businesses where they have the glorious concept, but the person on the front line, the lowest paid person, the one that confronts the public on a regular basis, either doesn't know this, or secondly, and this is very important, is not empowered to do it. Is not empowered to do it. And that's sad. This doesn't always work for all companies because they miss those last few links. Another example of that is
New Pig Corporation. Anybody hear about New Pig Corporation, Pennsylvania? They make absorbent materials for industry, sopping up oil or spills and things like that. And I heard a story where a person had called up and they'd had an environmental disaster at their plant and they needed overnight delivery of a particular product. And the salesperson said, that's not really the product you want. I think you should have this, what you described as the chemicals and the problem and so on. Person insisted that's what they want. We will overnight it to you. It was over $10,000 worth of overnight fees. The man got it, said it's the wrong product. They overnighted the right product and ate the shipping charges. That was the customer services representative prerogative to say, I do that for the company.
Thank you. I have worked with a major airline who will go unnamed, and I fly Continental a lot. I have their platinum card. I've had their highest level card for 9 years. In fact, they finally a few years back said I got it for the rest of my life. I don't have to qualify again, which they don't do anymore, but that was kind of nice. It's called the Infinity Program. And I get unbelievable service for them. And I actually walked around the counter one time. I said, I want to see what it says when my name pops up. And in bold print, it says, very important person. Treat with care. I like that. Now, there was an airline, I've had gold cards on a couple other airlines. I fly enough that I can sometimes get 2 gold cards in 1 year. And I had a gold card on another airline, and I won't give you all the customer service stories. It caused me to no longer fly them. But they hired me to do some training at their national headquarters, and I asked the person that I was dealing with, who was in charge of a huge budget for the company, major portion of their budget. I said, if this and this happened, would your employee be able to change this for me and make it right when it comes to flights, etc.? And she said, yes. And I said, that would probably be breaking the rules as the rules are written. She said, yes. And I said, would they be held accountable for it? She said, yes. I said, wait a minute here. They can make the change, but they're going to be in trouble. Is that what you're telling me? Uh-huh. I said, do you realize what a problem this is? She says, yes, there's a layer of management above me, and I'm working on it. I've been working on it for 6 years so far. Now, according to their last recent round of ads, all that has changed. So next time I go and do business for them, I'll find out on the flight up, because I'm going to make something go wrong on purpose just to see what happens. Okay? And if nothing else, I'll run over to Continental and fly into their town and do the presentation. So this is very important for you. You get the lesson for you. The lesson for you is multiple. First, let's take the micro lesson. If you decide customer service is where you're at, then you have to live and die based on customer service. The second point I'm making here is, what is your focal point? With Sony, it was innovation. With Nordstrom's, it's customer service. What makes you special? I spent a lot of time on this because one of the hardest things is somebody who's what do you call yourself, a marketing guru or whatever, it's marketing yourself, because you don't have that perspective. I mean, it's so much easier to walk in to somebody else and say, you know what you need to do, John, drop those 3 lines out of your phrase and of your logo and put this in instead, But for yourself, it's very difficult. And one of the things that I've decided, it's kind of like Michelangelo, you find out what you chip away and what's left as a statue. I am not customer service. I am lousy customer service. And I apologize for it all the time. Thank heaven there are some other things that are positive in the mix, but I've finally come to the conclusion we'll just keep trying to get up there to average. Okay? But I'm not customer service. I'm not geared for customer service. I am innovation. And I'll tell my clients, if you expect, and one thing I'm not total accuracy. I mean, if you expect something without a typo, I always say if you get a letter from me without at least 2 typos, distrust whether I wrote it. Now, I've had Phi Beta Kappas work on my staff. I've faxed things to Paul in the middle of the night and say, find the errors, because Paul can find the errors in anything, including your life. And graciously, he's looked them over for and given them back very fast, And, but you have to figure out what you are and what you aren't, because you got to have something to hang your hat on. And you also have to have a position statement on what you aren't. And you might as well get it up front. So I've had clients that are total perfectionists. And I say, by the way, we lost our editor. And actually, I got an editor. I got an editor. But this person is such a perfectionist, I don't think my editor would even do good enough for him. I said, by the way, we lost our editor, and everything I'm going to send you is going to be rough copy. It'll be typeset, and it'll look like it's finished copy, but it's rough copy. Oh, okay. Because I know this is the kind of person, when I send him I send him what I call finished copy. I never tell him that. I send him finished copy, but he thinks it's rough copy because he'll certainly find some typo in that doggone thing. He reads it backwards, which I found is one of the keys for misspelled words, because that way, right, you read it backwards for misspelled words because, you know, and if, you know, spell check doesn't work if you say circumcision instead of circumstance. And you spelled circumcision right. It goes through. It goes through. And then you sent 300 people a letter that says, in this circumcision, instead of in this circumstance. So find out what is your strong point. What are you going to be? What is your company all about? What is your business all about? What is your product all about? What is your presentation all about? What is your seminar all about? What is your radio show all about? What is this book and tape that you're selling? What is it all about? What are you as a provider of this all about? What is the focus? And that's where you should hang your hat, because you're hanging your hat there and you have success and you have something to fall back on. You go out and make a large group of broad brush claims that you see everybody else making. You become the Me Too marketer. You know, and someday I'm going to draw a cartoon of the Me Too marketer riding off into oblivion with arrows in their back. Because you claim all the things everybody else claims and you're not able to deliver. Guess what? I think it's a lot better to say, here's what I can deliver. I can think on my feet. I can give you instant answers to your questions. I'm extremely verbal. I can give you the words to say to get people to give you more of what you want. That's one of the things I say about myself. And everything I'm going to send you is going to be rough copy. Now, if you want final copy, that's fine. We have editors that we can hire. And actually, I do have now 6 different people around the country that I work with at cleaning things up, because I'm actually doing, you know, marketing campaigns. I'm doing, you know, everything from the marketing plan for launches of new products all the way through. And I know for myself, this is not where my strength is. So we just build that into the pricing system and email it down and email it back and print it and assume that they caught all the errors. So we're talking here about not having competition. So we're down to the point where you figure out what your focus is, your strengths and your weaknesses, and where are you going to hang your hat. What could some of these be? What could some of these be? Most of you will have your strength is going to be depth of knowledge. Ernie Kessler, who you'll talk to later on, what's he going to hang his hat on? Probably depth of knowledge. Would it be totally computerized back office? No, probably not. Probably not. He still likes 4x5 cards. Finally bought a computer the other day, and right now it's holding his office door open. But but you got to know what your strength is, and you got to know what your strength is, and you have to have enough strength that if somebody says, "Well, can you supply me with this?" You go, "No, we're not set up for supplying with that. Here's what we're all about. Here's what we're all about." Now, when we get down to your USP, there are lots of ways. Your USP can be a statement. This is our unique selling proposition. Probably one of the best ways that you'll see that is in a slogan. A slogan's a chunk down from the statement. Okay? So we got the USP statement, and then we got the slogan. Okay? And slogans are an easier way to study it than USPs, because first place corporations don't publish their USPs, but they do publish their slogans. So let's look at a couple of slogans and see what slogans are all about and how the slogans show these points of view. First, the most commonly quoted one probably in this arena is when it absolutely positively has to be there tomorrow. We're talking who here, folks? FedEx. FedEx. We're talking about Federal Express. So when it absolutely positively has to be there tomorrow, you call Federal Express. Now let me give you the real inside scoop from my point of view, from a marketing point of view, why Federal Express exists. First place, I think everybody knows by now that Federal Express was an MBA paper gone wrong. The guy got a bad grade on it, and he was sure it could be done, and he had to be very good at raising money on Wall Street, so he went out and raised the money on Wall Street and started Federal Express. And Federal Express was flying around for the first few weeks with empty planes, all coming into a hub with nothing in them. Marketing. One small point they forgot in the paper. Marketing. And the marketing they had wasn't sufficient. It was not going to drive the company, and the professor was going to be right, and it should have been a D or an F paper based on the way they approached it. There was a lady who had a wedding, and the dress had not shown up, and she had arranged with Federal Express to get the dress from the manufacturer flown to her, and it didn't show up on Friday for the rehearsals, and it was a Saturday wedding. And Friday after the rehearsal, when no dress had shown up, you know, when it absolutely positively has to be there sort of deal, it wasn't there. And she called the local Federal Express agent in this small town. I can't remember if it was Indiana or Ohio, someplace in the upper Midwest, and cried her peril to the agent. The agent went down to the airport. First, the agent called the dress manufacturer and said, "Stay there till I get there." Flew down to the airport Saturday morning in a rented plane, got a cab, went over and got the dress, came back in a cab, got in the rented plane, flew back, got to the wedding just about the time they were putting pins in the back of somebody else's dress she was going to have to wear. Now, ladies tend to pay attention to what goes on at weddings. Men try not to. Ladies, isn't it true that if anything is going wrong at a wedding, that becomes the talk, you know? Everybody's talking about it, you know, like the first time I was married, the minister didn't show up. That gave us all something to talk about. Should have given me something to think about. Maybe he should have and I shouldn't have. Anyway, so everybody was talking about the fact there's no wedding dress here, and then when the wedding dress all of a sudden showed, of course, that became the new talk, right? And turns out somebody was there who got the message to the Associated Press. And all of a sudden, on the human interest story page in the newspapers across the entire United States is this great human interest story about Federal Express gets the dress there just in the nick of time. What a story. Next day, all the planes are full. Amazing, isn't it? By the way, there's a sub-lesson in there, and the sub-lesson is public relations is worth 10 times press ads. If you can get public relations, it's worth 10 times. That's my number, 10. I got written up in Money Magazine. If I would have bought a 10-inch ad, I would have had to buy a 10-inch ad to get as many calls as I did. Money Magazine said Bernard Zick's advice for the impatient investor was the source for this great information, and gave my address in there. Little side tip. Never get quoted in a major publication without them promising attribution. I made that mistake. I've been in Wall Street Journal, I've been in Business Week, and finally I figured out, oh, you have to insist, don't use my stuff unless you give attribution. No problem, I do that now. But I got as many responses, I got as many people calling me and coming to talk to me because of a 1-inch mention in Money Magazine twice as I would if I would have bought a 10 inches more of ad. So Federal Express absolutely positively has to be there tomorrow. The Federal Express slogan was, "We're the people that delivered Sally's dress." No. No. When it absolutely positively has to be there tomorrow. Now, where did they get this concept? My personal opinion is they hired a fly consultant, a consultant fly. You heard of the old fly on the wall? This one was a consultant. And the idea I would love to see you put in your notes is, let's ask the fly on the wall. See, if we had a fly on the wall of your absolute ideal customer, the person that you would love to nail as a customer, how many people here know their ideal customer? May I please see the hands? Let me see those hands again. Do you know how important this concept is? There's a major medical corporation. Well, they're big in their field. They're not a huge corporation. That we doubled their profit in 2 years with this one concept. We said, where are you making all your money? I want to know what this man or woman dresses like. I want to know how old they are. I want to know how much they weigh. I want to know where they part their hair. I want a total description. They went through all their files for years and years and years and found out, guess what? 80% of their money was made out of 20% of the people. Amazing. We could call that an 80-20 rule. And I wanted a total definition of that 20%. I got the total definition of the 20%. And I said, now let's tell the sales force, this is who you call on. Everybody else can wait a year or two. If it doesn't fit this profile, there's no reason to call on them. And I can't remember the profile, this was about 5 years back, but it was like a medical clinic with 15 employees that is located on that has such and such access, that advertises in such and such, and we had a profile that they could just go to a city and find those people, and wham, when they hit them, those are the ones that ordered blood tests, and that's what this company did. Do you know who your ideal customer is? So first you got to know who your ideal customer is, and then you got to send that fly in on the wall. That fly is going to go in, and the fly is going to position themselves on the wall, and they're going to look down there, and they're going to listen. And in the case of Federal Express, the boss comes out and she says, this absolutely positively has to be there tomorrow, and hands it to her secretary, and he knows that if he doesn't get it there tomorrow, his job's in jeopardy. And the fly on the wall says, I'm going to write this one down in my palm 3, and heads on home, and that became the slogan. That's what you need to do. That's what your slogan should. And I'll tell you, know your slogan is working. You know how you know when your slogan's working, Marjorie? When your customers come back and they say, you know, I'm bringing it to you because this absolutely, positively has to be there tomorrow. When they start regurgitating your slogan to you, you know that it's working. You know that you connected. You know that you connected. Okay? So, delivered hot in 30 minutes or it's free. Delivered hot in 30 minutes or it's free. Who's that? Domino's Pizza, that's right. Domino's Pizza has dropped using that slogan many, many, many years ago, and everybody still remembers. Now, I don't know whether you remember why they dropped using the slogan, but it's kind of a sad event. No, it was worse than that. A driver getting there, trying to get there on time, hit a child, killed the child. And they immediately had a great PR firm. Immediately they took out 3/4-page ads in all the papers that says, it's with deep regret that this happened. First, we want you to know the facts. We do not emphasize speed over safety. We do not hire anybody with bad driving records. We train our drivers to drive safely. And we'll fire anybody who has problems with their driving. And we have years and years of our corporate history tied up in the slogan, delivered hot in 30 minutes or it's free. But we never want anybody to think that the value of a corporate slogan was higher than the value we place on one child's life. We will never use that slogan again. Talk about great public relations. Unlike Exxon, who came up with the slogan, that oil ain't that black. And whenever you have a tragedy or a big problem, it's a public relations thing, you get to the microphones first, and you tell them you're sorry, and you tell the truth, and the thing goes down. You hide, you lie, it gets bigger. Not that we've had any recent experience with that in the United States, but I really think if that guy would have done a Jimmy Swaggart. Oh, I did it. Oh, lordy, lordy, please forgive me. Let's all go to a prayer breakfast. Then, all this wouldn't have happened. Am I right? And Jimmy said, hey, Jimmy's still on the air. Jimmy's on the air. And, you know, and every so many months, oh, I did it again. I can't believe it. But Jimmy's still on the air. He's lost a few rating points, but he's still on the air. I mean, nobody took him off the air. Okay, that's another. So that's how you handle bad PR things. But the concept here is quite simple. Delivered hot in 30 minutes or it's free. What were they talking about there? Did they say this is the best cheese you can get? No, I don't even think it comes from cows. Did they say this is Mama Leone's best sauce? No, I say light on the sauce, I have better luck with the cheese. When do I want a pizza? When I want a pizza, is I got my 4 kids over, and they say, Dad, we're starved, and I'm hot, and I want to go take a shower. I don't want to figure out how to cook, which is, you know, one of those things I have yet to figure out. I pick up the phone. I want it there in 30 minutes. Do I want a free pizza? No, I want it there in 30 minutes. Last thing in the world, I want some free pizza. I want them to guarantee this so much that it'll hurt them. not to have it there in 30 minutes. That's what I want. I want them to be punished if I don't get it there in 30 minutes. Because I know if I make them put their money behind it, then that the guarantee is good, right? Which is how people look at guarantees usually. And to heck with the cheese and the sauce as long as it gets there. Okay? Now, the interesting thing is, Domino's Pizza was a real estate play. Pizza Hut had the corner on the pizza market, had the wedge on the pizza market, and they're owned by PepsiCo. I mean, that's a tough competitor to go up against. But here's what Domino's said. What is it that everybody wants? If we can say it back to them in such a way that we're guaranteeing all the benefits that are really key, what they're really looking for, then they'll give us a call. Now, how are we going to do this? Number one, we're not going to take a pad lease, which is the most expensive piece of real estate you can, an already existing shopping center with proven traffic count, and you buy part of the parking lot and drop your Pizza Hut in there. We're not going to pay for 4 walls and a roof. We're not going to pay for chairs for sit-down. We're not going to have to hire teenagers, which means you have to have a teenager supervisor who hire and fire teenagers because they're always nasty to the clients and they don't show up for work. We're going to eliminate all those costs. We're going to go into what is a storefront, which is probably the cheapest piece of commercial real estate you can have. It has cinder block walls on 3 sides and has a glass pane. We're just going to paint our name backwards on the window because we're going to deliver. So that's real estate play number 1. Real estate play number 2 is we're not going to go into Atlanta and then Columbus with 1 store and 1 store. We'll go down to Columbus with 4 stores because if we go to Columbus and take 4 stores, or Decatur and get 6 stores, we can do that and say, delivered hot in 30 minutes, because as a logistic play, we want enough stores that we can service 89% of the market within 30 minutes. It was a logistics play, which is real estate. But did they say smartest real estate play in the country? Did they say cheapest overhead so we can have much higher profits, take 1/3 of the profits and bonus the profits to our managers so that they'll work harder? 1/3 of the profits put it into advertising so we can have a bigger image in Pizza Hut, and the other 1/3 of the profits will drive to the bottom line so that we get financing more easily than any other non-major pizza operation, which is what they did? No. Why? Because who cares? You don't care about that. What you're doing is you're in the shower saying, let me see, if I towel just 3 times on each part, I probably ought to get to the door just enough time with a 20 to get my pizza for the kids. Because that's where you're at. So when you figure out your USP, you say, what is it in their heart of hearts that they want out of me? And how do I say that back to them? What's in it for you is not important. How you structured the organization to make it is not important. What your internal competitive advantage is on financing or whatever, that's not important. This is all client. What does the outside world there want? And how do you say it with the magic words that they immediately know this is what they're going to get? And folks, being able to do this can make all the difference between mediocre success and skyrocketing success. Yes, Dick. Why don't we get this so that everybody can hear?
It's nice to have one unique selling proposition, but what if you think you have 3 or 4, and you try and get all 3 or 4 in the same message, or do you think the end result is, if we're in a service business like most of us here are, you want your customer to make some money in some product that you're pushing. Well, the bottom line is make, but then how do you get your unique selling proposition, tell them that they're going to make money with you?
Okay, very good. He's got 2 questions embedded in there. Question number 1 is, what if you have multiple things that you're doing? Well, if you have multiple things that you're doing, then you got a choice. Then you got a choice. One is, do I take the multiple things here, shoot there, and shoot the other place with 3 USPs, okay, which is what you're thinking now would be your only alternative. The other thing is to use an NLP up. And that's what I've been working on and working. Because I actually, for a long time, and this next time I'm going to try not to do it, I had 2 sets of brochures. I have 2 PR kits. I have 2 of everything. Because I've discovered the corporate world, generally speaking, does not acknowledge the real estate world. If you have an MBA from Northwestern, which I do, and time in law school and so on and so forth, then you go to the corporate world and they say, oh, he knows what we're talking about. But if you tell them that you were a CCIM and that you bought over $20 million of personal property in the last such and such period of time, I, for a long time, and I'm trying to change this now, have two sets of brochures because the corporate market doesn't realize that the real estate market has any validity. They look at it as a bootstrap market. You can tell them you've been a CCIM and you bought $20 million worth of property. On the other side, you can tell them you got an MBA and a certain amount of, equivalent PhD and so on and so forth. But you try to mesh the two and they don't work. So I've been working on how to chunk that up. And it's very, very difficult. But if you can do that, that's the real key. Now, strategic competitive advantage I've found to be a chunk up for me because that's something that's necessary in real estate as well as, okay? And the slogan that I'm coming up with, or the title that I'm using for my speeches that I use in the corporate world and I'm using in the real estate world is how to build a bigger bottom line in a price competitive world, which is trademarked now. How to build a bigger bottom line in a price competitive world. Because I've worked for like 4 years to come up with something to say this is what I do, that I could say it to either one of the two worlds and both have them go, yeah, I need that. Okay? Now your goal on your USP is you want them to say one of two things when they hear it. You want them to say, I need that. Or you want them to say, I know somebody that needs that, let me give you their name. Okay? One other example, and then we'll switch to the elevator speech. One other example is there was a man that worked for a major consumer products company, a Colgate-Palmolive company, and he said, what I want to do is start a company, build the company, and sell it for $5 million. That's what I'm going to do. And he actually was totally money-driven. He wanted a retirement account of $5 million. Now I need a product. What will my product be? Well, the product he came up with was eyeglasses. Because Drew, well, Drew's too young. You haven't worn glasses all your life, because I didn't see you wearing much glasses years ago when I first met you. I wore glasses all my life. I've had RK surgery. Dr. Wendell Wong will always get a commercial from me in Torrance, California. There are two things a man doesn't want to have cut on. His eyes are one. And so you have to have somebody you really, really trust, because back then they made little slits in your eyeballs, okay, while you watched them do it, which is really fun, you know. But he was ambidextrous. He would switch the knife behind your head so you wouldn't see, and he cut with left hand and right hand. The guy's marvelous. Enough of a commercial for him. So, but I had glasses. I mean, I had Coke bottle glasses. They were terrible, because especially when big glasses came in style, the bigger they got, the thicker they got, you know, and I got to where I had so much weight on there that I had to tape them to my eyes almost. When I was a kid, I wore glasses, and I played football. And if you play football, one of the fun things the other team likes to do is to punch you in the face so that your glasses will break, and the bridge of your nose will get all cut up with a glass and so on and so forth, which happened on a regular basis. They'd right through the mask. And I went through football season with tape on my glasses. Why? Because when you got your glasses broke, you took them in to get them repaired. They'd say, come back in a week. It always took a week. So this guy said, I'd like to do glasses in about an hour. He says, that sounds pretty good. Write that down, glasses in about an hour. Let's build a company around it. Isn't that amazing? What he really did is he took the slogan that the public would respond to and built a company around it. There's a novel idea. You might want to consider that one. Work backwards. Now, when he turned to the technicians and he says, we're going to be in shopping centers. That way they can go shopping for about an hour, come back and get their glasses. They said, it won't work. I said, why not? You'd have to have over 1,500 different eyeglass blanks on hand, already pre-ground down to a certain level before you could do that. He said, okay, write that down. 1,500. Sure, it's 1,000. If it was 1,006, I'll need more storage bins. See, his whole point is, we're going to have glasses in about an hour. Don't tell me it can't be done. Tell me what I got to do it. And he sold the company for over $5 million, and it's called Lens Crafters today. And was it P&G? I knew it was. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. He's with P&G. Okay. I said a major consumer products company, but I couldn't remember which one it was. Okay. P&G. And went out on his own and did this, right? Yeah. No corporate backing on it. So, you see how the power of the slogan, because he built it around, but you also see This is, again, exactly, what does the customer want? If you tell them this is what you're going to get, and it's the thing they've been saying over and over again. Now, in Dick's example, and I don't want to slide past what Dick was saying, is how do you hone this? Well, one of the ways is you can have 3 USPs, but if you're going to be, it should be highly focused. For instance, there's a gentleman who speaks in the real estate field that has some very, very good courses on assisted living. Now, I would suggest to him that when he's marketing assisted living, that all of his focus is on assisted living. He also has on collecting debts. Now, if he wants to do something global, he could talk about unique business opportunities, but he probably more focused than that. He has, I would say, Michael, would need to really focus on the uniqueness of them and the fact that they're full and complete businesses. You see what I'm saying? So if he's going for something global, with the expression that somebody else trademarked, which is not being used now, is the business in a box, he could do the business in the box routine. Let's talk about the elevator speech. The elevator speech. Another little trademarked thing of mine, elevator speech. The concept I got originally from a friend of mine, Summers White, who used to say, I want you to give a speech, but play like you're in an elevator. Because he used to do a black tie dinner. In fact, it still does. Once a year, where supposedly leaders from various industries, we all brought, he paid for it. We all flew in, we had to pay our own expense, had to wear a tux. Those were the only 2 requirements. And he'd have 200-some people there. And for some reason, I got invited for quite a few years. And there'd be very important people who'd stand up and say, here's what's going on in politics. Here's what's going on in Australia. Here's what's so on and so forth. It was a fascinating evening. I always enjoyed it. And he told the people, because a lot of them were speakers or were politicians and used to giving orations and all that, play like you're in an elevator. And somebody asked what's going on, and they're on the 13th floor, and they pushed 1. And you got till you get to 1. That's what we want. We went around the room, bang, 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 bang. And I thought, what a great concept. Because also I know that quite often you'll be in an elevator, like let's say that Marjorie's in an elevator, and somebody sees their badge. Now, if you looked at the badge, the big print's Marjorie, the small print you can hardly see, you're going to say she's here for something. You say, hey, what do you do? And they push 1, and we're on our way down, That's how long you have. Now stop and think. Stop and think. When you're making a sales presentation to anybody, do you really have any longer than an elevator speech before they made an impression? Do you? There's no way. They bought you or they've sold you, and you got to unsell them or recover, one of the 2, after that very first speech. And the thing that amazes me, and I'm preaching to the choir here when it comes to you, because you are so knowledgeable in sales, but you know that you've worked with people in sales before. You had to script them. They fought you. But if you didn't script them, at least to the part where they give their introduction in the same manner over and over again so that everybody knows who they're doing business with and why they want to do business with them, you lost them, right? Most important part in sales. And when whether it's a muffler shop or whether it's you're selling computers to a major corporation, when you come in and you say hello, those first few minutes are really going to dictate how things go. There's a couple who've written a good book, Getting Business to Come to You. I'd recommend it. And it's the Edwards, Paul and Sarah. They had an expression in there that I've utilized, and by the way, given them credit for this for 10 years. It's interesting when you're a speaker, usually there's a joke that Bill told me, or Bill Herbert told me, next time a joke Bill told me, next time there's a joke I heard, next time I made this joke up, Paul and Sarah Edwards came up with this phrase that I really like and use. Write this down. You need to turn the page because you need more room than this. Probably it'd be good to have a full page to work with, and it won't fit on a mind map. On the mind map you say, C page for elevator speech. The first phrase is, do you know how? And then go down about half a page and say, what I do is. Do you know how what I do is? Do you know how what I do is? Example, you go to a dentist. Well, the one example I gave before, do you know how most companies can't tell you what they do, let alone what they can do for you? What I do is help you discover your unique selling proposition, to package it as a strategic competitive advantage, and say it in such a way that people will want more or want to do business with you, thus doubling your bottom line. It's another rephrase. That's the same, that's that pattern. And by the way, you're sitting in first class and the person next to you asks, what do you do? This is your chance to practice that elevator speech, because you do a lousy job. They say, interesting, and get the book out and put the headphones on. But if you say it right, you have a conversation. You have a conversation. And I think I booked another corporate client when I flew up to Chicago, because the guy sitting next to me says, at first, I being a negotiator, the first thing I did is I made sure I knew all about what he did before he had a chance to ask me what I did. And they sell ball bearings. And I found out what his hot buttons and issues were, and my elevator speech just happened to have a couple of those little hot buttons in there. And that elevator speech can be very important. It's also a good chance for the elevator speech is when you're in front of the audience, first time. This is what we're all about today. This is the results that you can expect out of what we're doing. That sort of deal. That comes out of the elevator speech. It's almost a benefit statement. Okay? Now I want you to do your elevator speech. I want you to write yours. So as I'm talking, start thinking about it, because that's going to be your assignment. Give an example. Have a lawyer who I worked with. She did bankruptcies and all kinds of tax matters because she was a CPA attorney. Being a CPA attorney, how do you position yourself? Well, the trick is, in this case, is to be able to say both, because you don't want to lose either part of the business. Truth of the matter is, most of her bread and butter comes in on bankruptcy, because those are a lot easier to get as clients. But the big money comes from doing the big tax cases, fighting the IRS and such as that. Also, there's a positioning problem. Remember the word positioning. How do you rank yourselves in the hierarchy of the from amoeba on up? You know, I used to say to presidents, but I don't say that anymore. How do you rank yourselves in the pecking order of life? Because, for instance, a bankruptcy attorney, I mean, that's where all the jokes come from. I mean, I love paradox. Did you know that the kamikaze pilots wore crash helmets? And did you know that bankruptcy attorneys will take payments on an installment plan? So, I mean, you see advertised in the paper, you know, Chapter 13, so on and so forth, and tax attorneys have to be up there somewhere near, you know, people who defend presidents. I mean, you know, they're way up there. So, or maybe even higher. So, the name of the game here is how do you position yourself so that you get the merit of your highest positioning, and also mention the other things you do. Do you know how many people have tax problems that need to be resolved, both federal, state, sales tax, and such as that? What I do is show you the best and most efficient way to solve your tax problems, reducing the hassle, the time, and the cost. And bankruptcy is one of the solutions for eliminating the payment of federal income taxes. Now, in that little phrase, what they've managed to do is, A, most people don't know that the bankruptcy can get rid of federal income taxes. Most people think that bankruptcy can't get rid of federal income taxes. It can't get rid of all of them, but it can get rid of some of them in certain circumstances. So all of a sudden, anybody who was thinking about bankruptcy hears this statement, goes, wow, I've now found the bankruptcy attorney I should be talking to, because everybody else tells me I can't get rid of my federal income taxes. So if they're talking to somebody who's thinking bankruptcy, they got that covered. If somebody is not thinking about bankruptcy, all they hear is federal income taxes, and that's the kind of cases that they're thinking about. So the hearer hears what they want to hear, but they manage to position themselves in what I call, Dick, the long suit and the strong suit. And one of the things you need to decide is, what is your long suit, what's your strong suit? Your long suit, what is your bread and butter? Like it might be, everybody's willing to buy your course on paper, because your course on paper is relatively inexpensive, and you sell a gazillion of them, and you just pass them out the door left and right at a cheap price. And maybe your strong suit is your foreclosure set, because the foreclosure set, you know, not a lot of people do foreclosures, so you have this big, fancy, expensive foreclosure set, and everybody has to pay a lot of money on that. That's your strong suit, your high price margin, and your long suit's the bankruptcy, is the paper. It's paper. And if you want to run an ad to find a whole bunch of new buyers, you'd probably sell a single tape on paper, which would give you the names, and then you could sell them a inexpensive course on paper, and then once you get the names, you could go back and say, once you know paper, one of the best places to utilize paper is within foreclosures. Here's the expensive foreclosure stuff, and you've moved them up through the ranks, and you brought them in on the long suit and moved them to the strong suit. You see what I'm saying? Now, what's neat is, in writing your elevator speech, you can decide, do you want to put your strong suit or your long suit in there? That's going to be up to you. But whichever one you decide, you're going to have to write on that. My suggestion is, if you have the courage, if you have 2 or 3 markets you're going to, and you have long suits and strong suits, you take the best market, the highest market you'd love to have, the one that takes the most experience, IQ, intelligence, whatever your qualifications are for succeeding, and you take the best, most expensive product you have, and if in doubt, you go with that. And the reason is, you want to be in a position that people will say, if he or she can do that, then obviously they can take care of these small things. Now, if you can embed both of them in there, it's even better. Say that again. If you can't come up with a global statement that encompasses everything you do, it's better to take your highest positioning. As an example, I have an attorney that I worked with just here recently that does financial planning, and he does employee problems, and he does estate planning. Well, we emphasize the estate planning because that's the highest level of business. That's the one that makes you the most money and people think takes the most amount of work. Protect your estate, both for your heirs. And for the phrase we have, but we wove it in there. Ask how does employee problems ask, because we're talking about preserving your existing business. Employee problems fit in there. But we went, which was estate. Excellent question, but what we said earlier was we probably need to figure out what our ideal client is and which direction we really want to go and paint the picture for our ideal client, the one that will make us the most money the quickest, or we get the most joy out of serving, which quite often is both. Okay? A good example of a dentist would be, do you know how, what do you do? Well, I'm a dentist. I drill out the rotten spots. Now, if you said that, people are going to flinch. People are going to flinch. But if instead you said, do you know how many people fear going to the dentist? What I do is deliver such gentle and caring dentistry that you don't even know you've been to the dentist till you get home and see how great your smile looks. It's kind of fun having a lot of dentists as clients. But you see the concept there? Because what you've done is you've taken the #1 fear and said, this is what my strength is. You've taken the #1 worry and reversed it and made it your strength. You see? So now is the practice time. Now is the time for you to work on your elevator speeches. And why don't you pause the tape while we're doing this. Okay. How many people have done theirs? We got Deb back there has done hers. You've done yours. Okay. We got 3. Let's go with the 3. Can you get her? Should I have her move up to the front? Can you get her? Should I have her move up to the front? Why don't you come up to the front? You got her? Okay. Yeah, I know that. I know that. But I've got a solution for that. I've done this before. Okay. We've just finished writing our USPs in the form of an elevator speech. Right, everybody? So let's go through a few of them. Deb, read me yours. Do you know how?
Do you know how tenants move when the house smells really bad and then it costs a lot to get rid of the smell?
Yes, I do.
What I do is help real estate investors and landlords increase or double their bottom line by getting rid of the smell without replacing hardwood floors, paneling, carpeting, anything.
I need that. Make sure and give me your card. I got a stinky house. Okay, and that's the response that you expect out of people. They'd probably say, if you were in the right market, if you were preaching to the choir, and you made this presentation to a real estate investor, they'd say, I need that, or I better have your card in case I need that, and that's the exact response you have. And you say, well, wait a minute, what if it turns out I'm talking to a policeman? You say it anyway, because that's the business you're in. You're hoping that that policeman will say, I know somebody who needs that. And then you got the exact same response, right? Okay, running to the other side of the room. We'll grab another volunteer here. Nick, what do we got? Do you know how?
Well, actually, what it is I teach my students to create a 30 to 60-second soundbite stealing from the politicians, basically, because there's someone who has to rocket credibility and USP very quickly.
Okay.
So It's not formatted in the do you know how, and this is what I can do.
Okay.
I've basically developed one that I've been using, and I would
What
like to
is
share
the
that
one
with
that you've
you.
used? That's fine.
Okay. Hi, my name is Nick Montarelli. I've got a business called Premier Resource Group. We buy and sell homes. We've got programs where we can buy houses all cash, close quickly, or we have programs where we can pay full price for your house, or we've got other programs where we can even make your payments till we buy them. We also sell homes, so we sell them very cheap, very, very far below market value, so you can make a profit with them, or we have properties available for people to buy on terms.
Okay, that's, hopefully we're on the 13th floor. And that's very good. And there's nothing wrong with having too much copy to begin with, but you got to be able to chunk it down. And I'd say Nick's the wholesale house person. Now, the ultimate chunk to get down to is a handle. We got a guy in Houston by the name of Mattress Mac. I'll give you one guess what he sells. You know, I'm Mattress Mac. We'll save you money. And he pulls out a $100 bill that's on fire. Okay, corny as that is, he's probably gives $3 million a year to charity because he's making so much money. But he's got the slogan Mattress Mac. Any place anybody goes, or the handle Mattress Mac, they call him Mattress Mac. A discipline, if you want to take the things that you said and chunk them down, a discipline is to try to come up with a handle. You know, and I'd say you're in the wholesale real estate business. And I would say that for a lot of people, if you say I'm in the wholesale real estate business, I specialize in houses to live in. I think that would probably be enough that most people would say, ooh, how do you do that? Now you get the chance to say, I got 6 options that I can do. You know, 3 ways I buy and 3 ways that I sell. You know, and if you wanted a do you know how many people would love to buy a home to live in but really can't afford it, and there are investors that want to get started but they'd like to start with a profit? What we do is arrange situations so that home buyers and investors can get involved at a wholesale price, sometimes so low they can make an instant profit by selling to somebody else the next day.
See, our real business is finding the seller.
Now listen to the tape, by the way, because that may not hit what you said, but that's the kind of thing that you need to do.
Right. So
Now go ahead. Now let me hear what you say, because always when somebody gives you an idea, it's best to gel on it and then make it better.
Well, no,
Plus,
I like the idea, but
okay,
I'm
I'm not looking for strokes. I'm just, yeah, okay, your program's for selling. Okay, you're looking for sellers.
Yeah,
okay.
because the houses,
So
once
do
you
you,
got them
okay,
on the
then
terms,
let's
the price
reverse
can
it.
sell themselves. Right.
Reverse it. Do you know how many people hate working with real estate brokers and don't want to spend the time to go through the process of having their house on the market for 90 days just to be disappointed and not have it sell? What we do is we give you instant solutions for getting out of the ownership of your house. Solutions that sometimes take less than 24 hours.
That's good.
See? And if you say that to people, you know, they'll go, I need that, or I know somebody needs that, or they'll say, those people must be crazy. I'm on the other side of the equation. What can you do? You don't win them all, okay? But you say, you'd still say the same thing. I'm in the wholesale house business. If you want to chunk it down, if you'd like to sell your house instantly, get cash, get rid of your problems, not have to deal with realtors and spend 90 days waiting to see if it sells, I'm in the wholesale house business. I'll buy your house instantly. Now, by saying wholesale, you also told them, ain't going to get a lot of money. Okay? Who else we got here? It's got theirs. Okay, let's go get some wisdom from Uncle Dick. Here's your microphone.
Thank you. Do you know how to buy real estate in your IRA?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Now,
We will show you how.
there's a real good point here. Now, let me tell you the point, and it's kind of interesting.
Okay.
Is that questions are dangerous. Questions are extremely dangerous. And I always tell people, watch out when you use a question in a headline because you're liable just to blow it. Or like, would you like to know such and such? No.
No.
See, so questions are real dangerous. You have to watch how you phrase them. And you know, if I was to rephrase that, I'd say, do you know how many people would love to enhance their retirement funds and still be able to invest in real estate at the same time? See, what we do is,
educate you and show you how to do it and make it easy for you and walk you through every steps so that you can make money in your real estate investment.
okay, what we do is show you how to use your IRA to build tax-deferred retirement funds. Not only do we show you how to do it, but we'll walk you through each and every step. so that there'll be no questions unanswered. See, something along those lines. But I would put the bait out there first. What is the bottom line benefit? How would you like to invest in real estate on a tax-deferred basis, to build a huge estate and not have to pay the taxes on it, maybe never? See? What we do is show you how to use your IRA as a tool for real estate investing. We show you each and every step of the way so there's no problems, no worries, and no legal hassles. See? Those kinds of things. Okay, now, in summary, here's where we're at. There's really two things we're talking about here. The first thing is mental, it's internal, and it's very, very, very difficult, and that's forcing you to focus. See, because most of you have a problem. How many people here have either a high IQ or a college education, either one? Let me see the hands. Okay, let me show you how to eliminate that problem. What you do is you stick your fingers in the socket, take 60 points off your IQ, and you make a lot more money. Because the smarter you are, the more ways you can find to make money. You know, Will's up to 35 back there. I mean, he's got so many ways to make money, he doesn't even know what he's doing for a living. So the first thing that's very, very difficult is to cause yourself to focus. Something I think I'm going to wait for another lifetime to do. The second thing is to figure out how do you communicate that succinctly and convincingly to other people so that they not only know what you do, but they know what you can do for them and the benefits that they're going to get out of doing business with you. So succinctly that they're either going to say, I need that, or I know somebody that needs that, and thus you'll start the beginning of a business relationship. I'm done.